Welcome back to me reading Transported, a Wings of Fire story, fanfiction. This time, it's chapter 13. As usual, if this is your first time watching this little series, I recommend you to watch the previous chapters. I'll read them yourself. Now, let's begin. This chapter's name is A Visit to Reality. Dana looked at Star. Her eyes were shut, and she seemed lifeless. Her once yellow scales had been completely stained blue, to the point where she looked like any regular ice wing. Daniel and anyone else would have thought she was dead, if it wasn't for the very subtle movement of her chest, rising up and down. She was breathing, but Daniel wondered how long she would last before she eventually succumbed to her injuries. A small pool of blue had begun to spread on the desert floor, converting every grain it touched into its own. Daniel's hurricane had simply disappeared, and he was able to look around at the aftermath of the fight. Blue and red bloodstains from him and Star covered the land before him, like small puddles of color on an empty canvas. Suddenly, Daniel's full body began to sear with pain, causing him to have to lie down on the sand next to Star. Luckily, it seemed safe to do so, as both dragons were way too injured to keep fighting. Ow. Daniel cried quietly. His body was already in terrible shape, and now, looking back on himself, flying around at the speed of light probably wasn't the best idea. His sides and back were bleeding heavily. Dark red lines pattered his underscales as he struggled to breathe properly. Looking at Star one last time, he couldn't help but feel sad. Blue soaked her body except for her claw tips, which were stained red. Well, Daniel started, coughing up blood as another blotch of red was painted on the floor of the desert arena. I guess we're both dying now. Star opened her eyes to look at him. She smiled. A line of blue leaked from her mouth and down to her chin. Yeah, I guess so. Daniel couldn't help but smile back, although it was not the right time for it. It just felt right. Soon his vision began to blur as his consciousness started to fade away. Star looked at him, regret in her eyes. The last thing Daniel heard her say before darkness consumed him was, "I'm sorry." And then, nothing but loud silence. Daniel woke. He was lying down, face up, and opened his eyes to find himself staring at a cold concrete ceiling. What? Concrete doesn't exist in Pyrea. Does it? Daniel thought, puzzled. He sat up, rubbing his eyes. He couldn't, no, he didn't believe what he saw. He was on the floor of an enclosed room. Bookshelves and posters of boy bands lined the walls. A small desk could be seen next to a human-sized bed. A small window sat on one of the walls, illuminating the inside of the room with a soft moonlight glow. Daniel's mind spun as he looked around. He was still a dragon, that's for sure. As he looked down to see red scales, although his injuries were nowhere to be seen. How strange. He wasn't sure if he was still in Pyrea. Nearby, a small buzz was heard. Daniel looked to see the mobile phone in front of him. A small bloodstain could be seen on its screen. Yeah, definitely not in Pyrea anymore. That's just great, Daniel thought, sarcastically. Another buzz came from the phone, and this time Daniel noticed something. He crawled over to take a closer look. The mobile phone had a pink rubber case with little pink cat ears that he would recognize anywhere. This wasn't any old mobile phone. It was his sister's. My sister? Daniel thought with a stutter. He grabbed his phone with his talon, attempting to unlock it without absolutely destroying the screen. Luckily for him, the screen protector seemed to be claw-proof. He put in the 8-digit code that his sister used. He knew the passcode because he would sometimes take mental notes every time he saw his sister unlock her phone in the past. Over the years, he slowly cracked the code and had learned it. 87209265. The phone opened. An AI voice came on. Welcome, Charlotte. You have 13 missed calls and 42 unread messages in the last 24 hours, spoke the robotic voice. The last 24 hours? What happened? Daniel was freaking out a little, since this was unusual. for her as she was always on top of her notifications. He had to admit it was kind of impressive. But now that she had this many missed calls and unread messages, he was worried about what might have happened. Also, a small bloodstain on the phone wasn't helping with calming him down. Maybe I should check the messages. Who knows? It might be important, Daniel thought to himself. It took a few tries to open the Messages app, since he wasn't exactly easy to use a mobile phone with talons and claws for hands and fingers. Also, small tidbit here, but the size difference between a Wings of Fire dragon and a human, I read this somewhere on Twitter or X or whatever, is like a human to a squirrel. So, like, how is he able to use it? Like a dragon fucking claw is as big as a human. Okay, how he's too big. He wouldn't be able to use it. All right, tip it over. Maybe. It took a few tries to open the Messages app, since it wasn't exactly easy to use a mobile phone with talons and claws for hands and fingers. Eventually, though, he managed to open it. He expected to find that maybe all of her missed messages were from a group chat, until he realized they were all from one number. What made this even stranger was that all the calls, as well, were from this one contact. The contact was unnamed unknown. There was no number shown, and it had no profile picture. Strange. Let me check the direct messages. Daniel opened the chat. It appeared that chat was made at 3:54 p.m. on December 18th, the day after I was trapped inside the box. He scrolled up to the beginning of the messages. Unknown. Hello? Charlotte? Lawrence? Charlotte. Who is this? Unknown. This is Sheriff Alex Williams speaking. I am here to sadly inform you that your parents were recently involved in a deadly accident. Charlotte. Accident? Accident? Are they all right? Unknown. I'm sorry. They did not make it. However, in their will, they left their wealth to you and your brother, Daniel. Unknown. You will each receive $597,834 to your names. However, due to the fact that Daniel is under the age of 18, he is unable to claim his part until his 18th birthday. Until then, we will hold onto the money for you. Unknown. Do you understand, Charlotte? Charlotte. Yes, Sheriff. Unknown. Good. I'm terribly sorry for your loss. We have dispatched a team of 3 officers to your location, so you may sign some documents to claim your part of your parents' will. Charlotte. I understand. Unknown. Good. And once again, I'm sorry for you and your brother's loss. Have a good day, Charlotte. Thank you for your cooperation. Daniel dropped the phone. Tears had begun to form in his eyes. He didn't stop them. He sat there for a bit before looking up again. No, this must be a mistake. My parents are dead. Right? Daniel picked up the phone again and made his way to his sister's bank account. A 4-digit PIN blocked his entrance. No, Daniel thought. No, please, not now. What would she use? Daniel stared at the 4-digit PIN code and realized that maybe she might have used her birth year. All right, let's try 1998. PIN incorrect. 2 attempts before account lock. All right, then. Maybe her birth month and day? Daniel inputted the code 1124. PIN incorrect. 1 attempt before account lock. Damn it! Daniel screamed. The tears had started to return. He needed to get into it. Then he thought of something. His sister always had an issue remembering dates, so she would normally use them as passwords, so she wouldn't forget. It was a long shot, but maybe his birthday would work. He put in 2009. Access granted. Welcome, Charlotte. Daniel didn't have time to celebrate. He quickly scrolled through his sister's deposits until he found what he was looking for. Honestly, he didn't want to. He didn't want to find it, but he did. December 18th, 6:47 p.m. $597,834. Mom and Dad's legacy. Daniel broke down. His mind and heart could take the hurt. His parents were really dead. Daniel sat there, rolled up in a small ball, sobbing. He sat there in the moonlight as his tears ran down his face. All this time, while he was stuck living his best life, his parents died, and he wasn't even there. Suddenly, Daniel heard crying from behind a door he hadn't noticed. He went out to check it out. His mind wasn't able to think straight from his sadness, so he didn't even think to check it if it was a trap or not. He walked out of the room only to realize that he was in his own house. He had never noticed since he'd never been allowed in his sister's room. Although, then again, it was kind of obvious whose room it was, if her belongings were inside. Am I really back home? No, I'm still a dragon, but it looks almost exactly like it. More sobbing could be heard from further down his house's main corridor. He kept walking. The familiar dark oak floorboards creaked with each step he took. As he wandered closer to the sobbing, he found himself staring at one of the photos on the wall. It was a photo of his parents a few years back. His dad was wearing a dark suit and tie, and his slick black hair was blowing in the wind. His mother was wearing a beautiful red dress and smooth white high heels. Her hair blew in the wind as they stood next to each other. They were standing together on a hillside as the ocean sparkled behind them. A beautiful sunset painted the sky in orangey red. It was truly a beautiful picture. It truly was a beautiful picture. Daniel smiled, but it was short-lived, as he soon remembered that they were both dead. He took one last glance at the picture before he continued down the hall, looking around at the walls of the house. It's like I never left. Though, to be fair, I don't even know if I did. Soon he found himself in front of the door to his room. The sobbing stopped, although Daniel didn't realize it. Is this real? Daniel thought. Or am I just imagining it? Daniel slowly opened the door to his room. Eventually, he was exactly as it was, everything was exactly as it was the day he left. The night desk next to his bed, the bookshelf filled with books, posters of superheroes and movies. It was all there. The moonlight from the window shone through his room, greeting him when he entered. He grabbed one of the books from the dusty black shelf. It was as if it was never touched. His bed was still as comfy as ever as he lay down onto it, or on it. He stared up at his star-covered ceiling. He had one day painted yellow stars on it, so that he could imagine he was outside stargazing while he drifted off to sleep. Oh, what wouldn't I give to come back to this? Daniel thought sadly. He was remembering the good times he had in this very room, staying up all night, reading his favorite books and comics, chilling out on his phone. Wait, my phone! Daniel sat up from his bed and looked at his bedside table. Unfortunately, to his disappointment, it was not there. However, what was there instead made Daniel's heart skip a beat. It was a poster, or more specifically, a missing persons poster. But what scared Daniel the most was that it had his picture on it. He didn't know how he had missed it. He grabbed the piece of parchment with a claw, careful not to rip it by accident. Sitting back down on the bed, he studied the poster. Missing. Daniel Lawrence was last seen on the 17th of December on 18 Victoria Avenue. If you have seen him, please call 198-872-988-283-982. That ain't a real number, but sure. It was kind of weird staring it. It was right there, but wasn't. Although he didn't have time to study the paper properly, as suddenly Daniel's sister, Charlotte, barged into the room. Ah! Daniel screamed, dropping the paper in his talons. No, don't freak out. He gave her a shy smile, but to his surprise, she walked past him, not even fazed by his appearance. In fact, she didn't even notice him. Am I dead? Daniel stuttered. Daniel shuddered as he stared at his sister. She seemed to leave a trail as he walked. As she walked, a blur of herself followed her every movement. She picked up the missing person's poster. I wish you were here. I wish you were here right now, Daniel. Charlotte sighed. A small tear fell from her left eye. However, to Daniel, her words echoed in his mind over and over a few times before fading away. Whoa, what was that? Daniel looked back at her to see a small tear leave her eye. Hey, I'm here. Don't worry, Daniel said as he tried to wrap one of his dragon wings around her, only for it to pass right through, like she wasn't even real. Something wasn't right. He was either dead, or the world around him was fake. Both of which are not good situations, Daniel thought glumly. Charlotte got up off the bed and headed out of Daniel's room. Maybe I should follow her. I don't have much else to do. Daniel got out of his bed and slowly followed his sister. After exiting Daniel's room, she walked around the main entrance of the house before eventually heading up to the attic. The attic. She hates it up there. What's she up to? Daniel quietly followed her up. Step by step, they climbed. Daniel was sure that the steps would break under all his weight as a dragon. But they stood strong. Either that, or they can't break because I don't exist. Daniel's intrusive thoughts whispered to him. He shut them out as he continued to climb the steps. Another tidbit here, but if he wasn't real, then all the stuff he picked up and all the items he used, he'd phase right through them. So why is he not like picking stuff up? Like pick stuff up when Charlotte was there to be like, hey, something's here. Hello. No. I don't know why, but tidbit over. They eventually reached the attic where Daniel's makeshift book castle still stood. Charlotte walked and took a seat on the orange beanbag before grabbing the 15th Wings of Fire book. Now, Daniel was really confused. She hated that book series. Why was she reading one, let alone the last one, if she probably never read the first? His thoughts were interrupted when she suddenly spoke. You know, I used to hate these series. I used to hate this series. But after you disappeared a month ago, it was the last thing I had of you. So I decided to read it. Is she talking to me? Does she know I'm here? Or is she just talking to herself? Daniel pondered. However, he soon remembered what she just said. Wait, did she say a month? Daniel yelled mentally. He rushed to the calendar and took a look at the date. January 20th. He had really been stuck in Pyria for over a month. I've been gone for over a month. I missed Christmas and New Year's. While Charlotte was alone. Daniel felt really bad for his sister. Usually, he wouldn't care much, since she was always yelling at him for no reason. But after everything she had been through in the past month, and with nobody to talk to, he looked back at her. She was reading something. She was quietly reading, turning the pages every 30 seconds or so. Daniel had never seen her so quiet and peaceful. She always tended to be talking on her phone, which was constantly buzzing about with notifications almost every second. It's almost alien seeing her like this. Suddenly, a loud barrage of whispers poured into his head and mind. Louder and louder, they spoke. Daniel covered his ears in a futile attempt to ease the whispers. The chronic whispers were speaking to him. They were trying to tell him something, repeating the same thing over and over. I would say it, but I can't fucking understand it besides a few of them. So I will try my best. You seek, make visit. You want, you seek, take a visit. You seek, take a visit. He couldn't make it out. Neither could I. But there were words jumbled up between the cryptic messages. His consciousness began to fade away. He tried to take one last glance at his sister before darkness came to take him. But all he was met with was a glowing book. Daniel opened his eyes to find multiple familiar dragon faces looming over him. Oh, thank moons he's alive, he heard someone say. Daniel was too dazed to understand what was happening, or what just happened to him. But one thing was for sure. He was back in Pyria. And most importantly, he was alive. And that is the end of the chapter. Except for, as usual, the author's note at the very bottom. Hello, everyone. I hope this interesting chapter added some spice to the story. Hopefully, from now on out, it should be getting a lot more interesting for you. And thank you all for even deciding to read this book, let alone as far as this chapter. I'll see if I can get another chapter out soon. But it may take a few days, as I have other business to take care of. But apart from that, I'll see you guys soon. Bye! So, chapter review. Alright, so winged fire dragons are massive compared to humans, okay? Like, you know how earlier I said, like, the size comparison is like a human and a squirrel? Yeah. Daniel wouldn't be able to fit in the fucking house, let alone, like, interact with all the little small objects, like, especially a phone. I mean, his talon is probably as big as a single fucking claw is probably as big as the phone. He would have to be like really, really close. I'm looking at it with one eye and being really, really careful not to apply too much pressure or else the screen will crack. Then again, he was able to interact with objects while in that dream world. And yet, he wasn't able to interact with Charlotte. Now, either at one point in that like little dream state, he suddenly was unable to like interact with anything. It all phased through anything, or he's still able to interact, but it's not really effective on living targets. I don't know how that works, but hey, it works, I guess. All right. That's all I had to say. See you next time. Hopefully.